Today we know these consequences for the world. Few know the injustices of capitalism, the source of inhumane working conditions, and the exploitation of women and children with work shifts of 14 to 16 hours. Over time, different governments stepped in to regulate capitalism in the history of industrial development in the 18th and 19th centuries. Capitalism created few rich and the most poor in all of history. It is accused of creating the conditions of the Second World War, and why not some of the large wars of the 19th and 20th centuries? Selfishness and one's own benefit are the roots of this system. The Great Depression of 1929 and the benefits offered to managers in the decade of the 90s reveal the greed of the lovers of wealth that degenerated into corruption and various scandals that have created instability and distrust in world governments. The cases of Enron, WorldCom, and Tyco, among others. Scandals and instability in a world where poverty is more globalized than the market. Capitalism, like no other system, had never produced so much wealth and had never been so poorly distributed. In the beginning of the 21st century, poverty is one of the greatest problems of the world, and it appears that the rich worry about the poor simply because they turn out to be too expensive. Not all is bad, of course. Capitalism is responsible for development everywhere, scientific advances, the cities, and present world conditions. At the beginning of our century, the driving force of economy was the dollar, and in a globalized economy, other factors are involved, such as the price of petroleum. These, together with the behavior of the world's economy, the European Union and Japan, will determine the economic conditions for developing countries. Any war, social instability, or natural disaster will jeopardize in different ways the recovery of the economy, sustainable development, and the decrease of poverty. The axiom that first one must generate wealth so that later, automatically, it will arrive at the lowest sectors has shown its results. The investigation, carried out first in 1960, was repeated in 1990. In these 30 years, 20% of the richest countries increased their participation in world wealth from 70.2% to 82.7%, while 20% of the poorest decreased, dropping from 2.3% to 1.4%. If in 1960 the wealth of countries from the first group was 30 times higher than the poorest, in 1990 it was 60 times higher. Today in the United States, the difference between the rich and the poor is increasingly conspicuous. The cost of a missile would give food to 80,000 children for 3 years in Africa. World organizations say that with only €6 a month, a girl and her family could have drinking water for the remainder of their lives. In other words, the price of one airplane would provide thousands of families with drinking water. What would the cost of one single aircraft carrier accomplish if it were invested for the benefit of the most needy nations? Industrialization, from the hand of capitalism, has brought its share of destruction. The effect of global warming is nature's bill for our venerated system of commerce. Economic globalization, instead of offering benefits for all, has brought the planet to the edge of environmental catastrophe. In the midst of unprecedented social agitation, with the economy of the majority of the countries in shambles, and an increase in poverty, hunger, shortage of land, migration, and social dislocation. Nowadays it can be affirmed that the experiment of globalization is a failure.